The history of unpunished violence against our people clearly indicates that we must be prepared to defend ourselves, or we will continue to be a defenseless people at the mercy of a ruthless and violent racist mob.
Welcome to Forgotten Black History. In this episode, we shine a light on a unique and profound aspect of our history, the stories of Black Indigenous Americans. As we explore the intersection of African and Indigenous heritages, we uncover the resilience, creativity, and enduring legacy of those whose identities embody both cultures. Through compelling facts, we invite you to join us on a journey of discovery, revealing the cultural, historical, and social contributions of Black Indigenous communities that have often been left in the shadows. Together, we will celebrate our voices, honoring our struggles, triumphs, and vibrant identities. So, whether you're a history enthusiast or just beginning to explore these narratives, come along with us as we unearth the treasures of forgotten Black history. Let's dive in.
Came out of Okemokee River down in the center of Georgia. I'm a full-blooded Muskogee Indian.
All right, you're a full-blooded
Muskogee.
Muskogee.
M-U-S-K-O-G-E-E, Muskogee.
And where are they normally from?
They're normally from a place called Twiggs County, Georgia. A river ran behind my grandmother house called Okemokee River. And the Indian got the name from the Okemokee River. And my people were down there, they never were slaves, you understand? They had 28 slaves.
Hold on. I gotta hear that again. You saying your people?
My people, which was Sarah Ella Hudson, the Prince Hudson, man, which is Prince of the Hudson River. That's my great-great-grandfather. I come from him until they came up from London, England. They married my grandmother, which was Muskogee Indian. I got the records on and my deed made match and everything. He was Episcopalian. He got Episcopalian around on 127th Street and 5th Avenue.
Now, you talked about having slaves as well.
Well, Sarah Hudson and my great-grandmother, grandfather, Prince Hudson, they had 28 slaves.
Wow, they had 28 slaves?
28 slaves.
Were they Africans?
No, they were regular black people. They were the regular black people, for as I know.
Now,
Black Indigenous American peoples are individuals who have both African and Indigenous ancestry, reflecting a unique blend of cultural heritages.
At the recent commemorations for the centenary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, Black Native Americans were a strong presence. And as with the massacre of 1921, many in the US and elsewhere aren't even aware of their existence. Some Native American tribes long accepted black members. But in what's now Oklahoma, white settlers judged the tribes civilized because not only did they assimilate with the newcomers in dress and religion, but also in the adoption of black chattel slavery. After the Civil War, the tribal nations abolished slavery as part of treaties signed with the federal government in 1866. Former slaves would be fully integrated and now known as freedmen. And there was full integration and intermarriage. Ligas Choteau Perryman even served as the principal chief of the Creek Nation between 1887 and 1895.
We know that America Cohee was born in 1888. She is an original enrollee of the Muskogee Creek Nation.
Rhonda Grayson's great-grandmother lived her whole life as a member of the Muskogee Creek tribe. But then, in 1979, the Creek passed new laws decreeing that freedmen were no longer tribal members.
And what is the relationship of the Umasi people to this land?
This land is actually the mound builders' land, which is the Tukubaga in our language. They are relatives of ours, and all mound builders are related, not by name, but by blood. So this land is related to our people, and Sacred Lands and Eric is doing a very good job of preserving this land. And keeping those things that are ancient to us sacred. So we thank him, and that's the purpose of BBNI.
People of African descent have been present in the Americas since before European colonization, often as early as the 15th century through exploration and trade.
My name is Shalena, and I'm from the Shinnecock Nation, and we are the original stewards of this land, of the Southampton territory, and our land actually was from further out towards the west, over the canal in the Hampton Bays area, and then all the way over to Wainscott. And then from there on are the Montauk people. So the Shinnecock are the original, this is our original territory, and our reservation is actually located on a piece of our original land, so we're pretty lucky to have that. You know, we still have our resources available, and we're learning to, you know, be reconnected to those resources and use them for our, you know, our development, you know, our economic development. So we're learning those ways, and we're hoping to continue to bring that up.
Many Black Indigenous Americans evolved from relationships between Indigenous peoples and African slaves brought to the Americas, creating mixed communities that retain aspects of both cultures.
Here to Southampton, you'll see that there's this huge, beautiful reservation that's right on the water, and it's a reservation because it's a bargain that the Native Americans had to make with the government. But really, if you think about it, this whole entire island was in itself all natives, all Algonquin, all Montauks, all Amagansett Indians, all Shinnecock. Okay, you can go all up and down the island. Even Manhattan, New York City, that is a Native American name because it was bought for $24 in beads. All right, so we have to know our history. I know they don't teach this in schools. I know they don't. I was a teacher for 35 years. You can't go by the textbook. I had to dig deeper to help my students understand that what they were seeing was an illusion. They had to understand the background of what was going on. We are all connected to each other, and embrace each other like that and continue to try to find your roots. Even if you can't remember the people's names, remember that you are part of a history of America that's been subdued and hidden so you don't know your power and your origin. Over and out.
Throughout the Americas, runaway slaves formed independent communities called Maroon societies, often in alliance with indigenous tribes, maintaining their cultural practices.
We really believe that all the people on the earth were placed in one geographical location, and then all of a sudden, something or someone told them, travel out. And in their travels, they became different colors, different textures, different hues. Or can we understand that the planet, the original man is on the whole planet? Everywhere you go, you see people of color. I don't give a fuck. The motherfucking Eskimo is a nigger. And he in the coldest region there is. So we ain't even gonna get off into, oh, well, the climate made the skin color change and this and that, because that's foolishness. We know what made the skin color change and the textures change and all of that. It had nothing to do with no goddamn location. Because niggas over here got big noses. Niggas in Africa got big noses. The motherfucking Mayans, Incans, Aztecs, Toltecs, Olmecs had big noses. But they weren't in the same spot, so...
In North America, some tribes, particularly in Canada, officially recognize people of mixed Black and Indigenous ancestry as part of their nation.
I remember when I first encountered them, when I first came to New York, one of the biggest Indian museums in the Northeast was in Harlem, 155th and Broadway. They've since moved it down to downtown on the other side of Wall Street in what they call the houses where they used to sell us and the products.
Yeah.
But it was out here, and I would go there, and they had these mummies, right? These shrunken little Black people. And they were calling them Indians.
Wow.
I can never think of, why is these little nappy heads, short people, like pygmies, what we call pygmies or tall people, right? They had them mummified.
Wow.
And they had them on display as the people who, they didn't lie. These were the indigenous population in North America.
Represent being Black.
Festivals and cultural gatherings often merge African and Indigenous traditions through music, dance, and storytelling.
Being Native, I have noticed so many people that are of two, whether they are Mexican and white or whatever mix they are, they were denied to represent one or the other. And in our history was paper genocide of you had to either pick Black or white or colored or white or other. And a lot of people was not able to represent their culture. I am here today because my ancestors were denied to represent their culture. And yes, I dealt with racism on both sides. Growing up, Black girls used to pull my hair, or I was teased because they would say I was adopted, or boys used to say, how come you don't look like your mother, because I would date you because you're so dark. I dealt with it in the native side when I would go to powwows and I'm feeling great in my fancy shawl and ready to dance, and they say, get that nigger off the powwow grounds. So I've dealt with it on both sides, but I thank God for my grandfather, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who taught me of who our common enemy is, and is the root of it is evil, and the root of it is colonization and supremacy and privilege.
The histories of Black Indigenous peoples are marked by both trauma from colonization and slavery, and resilience in preserving their unique identities.
If there was any place that belonged to us, right, by birthright, by blood right, it is America.
Yes, indeed.
And everybody around the world has to respect that. So when you see a Black American and they travel around the world, please don't be disrespectful and ask them outside of America where they from.
Black Indigenous Americans have contributed significantly to American culture, including fields like music, art, agriculture, and politics.
Almost all African Americans I know, my relatives are convinced that we have Native Americans in the family.
This is Lucy's sister, and she had hair down to her knee. I thought she looked, like a Native American. And that's, like I said, that was my mom, and she wore 70s headbands.
Oh, it's your mom?
In the 70s.
Oh,
she
your
looked
mom's
like,
cool.
Everyone thought she was Native American.
I have a little Choctaw Indian in my background.
She looked like an Indian woman. She looked like, like straight off the prairie.
They talk about the cheekbones and.
Yeah, you do have high cheekbones.
Yeah.
She always had long black hair, and so that's Indian hair.
Many Black Indigenous communities have developed unique dialects that blend Indigenous languages with African languages, showcasing their linguistic heritage.
South America had nothing but melanated people. Nothing but melanated people. The Olmecs, the Mayans, the Aztecs. And we had all our native Indians like the Blackfoot, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Iroquois, the Seminoles, the Navajos, and many, 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 many more that was already here in so-called North America before any white man set his damn foot on this planet.
Black Indigenous Americans frequently face challenges related to land rights, often fighting for recognition of their historical ties to ancestral lands.
The Olmec world, as I say, you have this corroboration of evidence, the skeletal evidence in the dry areas, because in the swampy areas no skeletal evidence survived. Rasboy has pointed to the very important thing, that is the possibility even of mummification in the Olmec world, but because the skeletons were not preserved, we find it in a statue where you have the rib cage outlined, the hands close together, the fingers open, the shroud, etc., just like in the Egyptian world. Nowhere on earth, on any archaeological site, could you find a corroboration of so much evidence. Stone heads representing a distinct physical type, terracottas representing the same type with the texture of hair and coloration of skin, and skeletal evidence representing that type, as high as 13.5% at Tlatilco, going down to 4.5% at Monte Alban. And you yet deny the existence of that type because it involved African and it could not be there.
Relationships between Black, Indigenous, and Indigenous-only communities can be complex, shaped by historical interactions and contemporary socio-political issues.
Leo Weiner, a Hungarian-American historian and linguist, made a significant contribution to our understanding of pre-Columbian contact between Africans in the Americas. His research shed light on the possibility that Africans had reached the Americas before Christopher Columbus, using evidence derived from Columbus's own accounts. According to Leo Weiner in his book entitled Africa and the Discovery of America, Columbus reported in his journal that the Native Americans confirmed black-skinned people had come from the southeast in boats,
trading in gold-tipped spears. It appears the Native Americans described the spearheads as guanin, which means gold in the Mandinka language.
Black Indigenous Americans have played pivotal roles in various resistance movements against colonization and oppression, including the Civil Rights Movement.
Stole them, whatever his name. I made a video about this foolish motherfucker the other day, sitting up there trying to steal our history, sitting up there talking about Europeans came here, wasn't nobody here, you damn fool. How in the hell you get to be a congressman? You don't even know your own damn history, and you don't know American history. America was always dominated and populated by melanated people. The Olmec civilization down in Mexico, that's right, was the first civilization in America. Black civilization, melanated. Then they had the Incas and the Mayans. And we talk about all of North America, including Canada, the so-called United States of America and Mexico, and all the Caribbean islands and Central America, Honduras, and all of these other places that goes all the way to South America. Even South America had nothing but melanated people.
Several indigenous tribes allied with black slaves during uprisings and rebellions, demonstrating solidarity against colonial oppression.
Why is the Yamasee a problem? I can tell you why the Yamasee is a problem. Because we're the only tribe that look like we were identified. How do I fake being a Negro? They be like, oh, y'all pretendians. How do you fake being a Negro? If this is a description of my people, how do I pretend to be something that I, quote, look like?
Traditional practices such as hunting, fishing, and agriculture continue to be practiced among Black indigenous peoples, blending indigenous knowledge with African techniques.
There are not many of you left.
Well, it's a lot of us left.
We just don't know.
Like you just don't know.
Some of us don't know.
You just don't know. You ever heard of the Pusa Talk?
Yes.
P-O-O-S-P-A-C-U-C-K. Right. If you look at the Pusa Talk, you'll see me doing these very big, huge sculpture out of cement, out of red cement. Also, the Shinnecock, you heard of Shinnecock?
Yes.
Okay, the Shinnecock, I did a few things out there in the Shinnecock, but not like the Okachuk. The Pusa Talk is the renovation of Okachuk is the people. Okay? And it's out there in Nestalona Island. Off of exit 68, go Sunrise. Off of exit 68 to Long Island. 495 Long Island Expressway, get off of exit 68. You go south and you go right to the Pusa Talk renovation. All those Indians there, they look, if you saw them, you would think they were regular black people. Right. But see, one thing about it, like, we was dark at first. We wasn't white. And I'm a good example. My great-grandfather there, which is the Hudson River, there's no lie. I'm talking about street talk like a lot of people. I got proof that my great-grandfather, when they came over here, they met with these pretty black Indians, and they mixed with those. That's where the light complexion later come from.
Black indigenous artists often create works that reflect the synthesis of their dual heritage, using art as a means of cultural expression and activism.
They started coming up with more laws that it went from 1/4 to 1/8, and then it eventually went to 1/16, and then it went to 1 drop.
Okay, hold on, 1/16. So a person could have 15 grandparents, great-grandparents from America, 1 parent from Africa, and they would be considered African. They could not be classified as a Native American.
That's correct, yes.
But then on the same term, it could be 15 British and 1 Native American, and now that person can be classified as Native American.
Memphis is now becoming the most populated with African Americans.
Indigenous Americans.
Say that again?
Indigenous.
Okay.
Many Black indigenous Americans are actively involved in contemporary movements for social justice, environmental stewardship, and indigenous rights.
Question was asked. It sounds like you're saying, what was the difference between a Creek and a Yamasee? And the man paused, and you could see him breathe like, I got to really answer this. He said there was none. Why? Because the Yamasee were identified as Negro. The word creek was invented for the purpose of treaties.
During the era of slavery, Black indigenous peoples often helped others escape through networks that included both African and indigenous roots.
Black Americans saying that they're indigenous is not self-hate. It is actually quite the opposite. Learning your family and learning where your ancestors come from and verifying what your ancestors or your family has passed down to you is self-love. You want to know what is self-hate? Disregarding your family, disregarding your oral traditions, and not doing the research for yourself on your family's history to listen to someone that came up with a theory about where you came from. Listening to a random science or a random historian, a random archaeologist about where you come from versus someone that you're supposed to love and trust, that is self-hate.
Black indigenous communities have contributed significantly to the culinary landscape, integrating African and native ingredients and cooking methods.
Here is the story of the Black Seminoles, a group of fugitive slaves who escaped bondage. In the early 1700s, when what we know as America began to take shape, some Gullah Geechee slaves were able to escape slavery more than 150 years before the start of the Civil War. These fugitive slaves fled south into the Florida Peninsula from coastal South Carolina and Georgia. At the time, Florida, which was owned by the Spanish, was nothing more than a swampy jungle. The Spanish offered escaped slaves and renegade Indians a refuge from the onslaught of American tyranny. By the late 1700s, the Gullahs and some Native Americans established their own free settlements in Florida. The Gullahs adopted the ways of the natives, while the natives found joy in Gullah music and folklore. The Gullah also taught the natives how to survive Florida's harsh malaria-ridden swamps. They would eventually be dubbed Seminole Negroes or the Black Seminoles by American settlers.
Some legal frameworks, including treaties and legislations, acknowledge the rights and identities of Black indigenous peoples, although enforcement can vary widely.
Come from a bloodline of strong militant people and intellectual people.
Well, yeah, and then there's my Choctaw grandmother. She used to laugh at all the colored members of the family, and she said, "Oh, you colored folk, you get mad when white folk do stuff to you. We just took a scalp and nailed it to the lodgepole and smiled." She wound up benefiting the black cause. There is a historical black college and university, well, yes, in Jackson, Tennessee, known as Lane College. It was founded in 1862, and she wound up giving a third of the land to them that they're built on.
The experiences and stories of Black indigenous American peoples are documented in historical accounts, literature, and oral traditions, emphasizing their diverse narratives.
By the 1800s, there were many states that were coming out with what they were calling black laws.
Okay.
And one of these black laws, which is really one of the more infamous ones, and really this one is coming from Virginia, but we find that these black laws, they really transferred from state to state to state. What one state did, another state usually picked up and did the same thing. And this one, it says in 1866, after the Civil War, that every person having 1/4 or more Negro blood shall be deemed a colored person, and every person not a colored person having 1/4 or more Indian blood shall be deemed Indian.
Okay, now what does that do? Now, okay, hold on, let's go back. If you have 1/4 or more Negro blood, then you should be called a colored person.
Now again, we don't know what the Negro is.
Right, because a Negro could have been an indigenous individual.
Correct, yes.
And so really here it goes again, where they're really trying to create this white Black America, and really trying to remove that Indian away from the now being called colored people.
Where were you when I was a kid, figuring out that 300 million of my ancestors are buried in America? Where were you guys asking those same questions when I was a kid, learning about the traumatic events of my familial history and what I'm proud to come from and why I'm proud to stand here, and why when I repeat myself that I'm not going to stand down, it has nothing to do with dismissing any other race or group of people. I'm just proud of my heritage and what we've been through.
Shaping of Black America by Dr. Laron Bennett. There's a chapter in there called The Red and the Black, and he deals with that issue. And how the European Americans solved the problem, they said, listen, they're all black. Let's just raid their villages and put them all in slavery.
Down in Peru, they found a mummified body of a Peruvian girl who was sacrificed about 500 years ago. And the Peruvian girl, if you look at her, her body's well preserved. She has African features, African facial features. She even has African style braids. And this Peruvian mummified girl is still on display.
Phrase for 2022 on that I give to my brothers and sisters is find your tribe season. It's find your tribe season. It really is about reconnecting to your lineage and appreciating it, you know? And when you find your identity, it's just, you're not walking confused out here and trying to piece yourself together from other people's knowledge about who you are, you know, because there's a lot of false information about who we are as indigenous black people. You know, and it's really about paying homage to all those who have come before you. And there has been numerous wars that have taken place over centuries against Indigenous Americans or Indigenous people, Black Americans, Black people. And this is very sacred to us because it's a ritual, you know, and it means different things in different households and different cultures all around the world. Sage is a global thing.
Some people were ashamed to even say they was Native American again, especially living in African American communities, because then they told me they was looked upon as being a traitor or trying to be something that they were not. But then they knew their grandmother was an Indian. And some of these callers, when they called me, I explained to them that what we're looking at here is a denial that is coming from the inside now, not from the outside.
You know, Brother West, we allowed the white man to come in and just assume our identities. They came into Egypt and they assumed the identities of the Egyptians. They came down into Puerto Rico and assumed the Puerto Ricans' identity. Now they come in and they're assuming the Native Americans' identity. They're setting up tribes. They're getting government money. They're the thieves.
Oh yeah, no.
They're the biggest thieves that's going around.
Twa people. Case in point, Twa people, the Dogon, some parts of the Dravidians, your people in the South Pacific, your people in the rainforest down in South America, indigenous people.
These are the images of Africans who were known as the Olmecs, who were part of the ruling class in Mexico for hundreds of years, and they left these images all throughout Mexico. They inspired the creation of the calendar, architecture, engineering, cosmology.
A lot of Native Americans who had black phenotypes, they just got reclassified as Negro without them even knowing it. You had white supremacists like Walter Plecker working in the statistics office, Naomi Drake working down in New Orleans and Louisiana. Plecker, who was in Virginia, they went through all the records, him and his people, and saw anybody with any type of black phenotypes or anybody with any type of black ancestry or any Native American who could be perceived as black, they just reclassified them as Negro.
Actually, the state we're in now, Georgia, becomes a part of the colonies because of fear of Florida. That's down south. Right.
Yeah.
They actually become a colony. They feared
right.
The Carolina states feared the Seminoles down south.
So Georgia had to block it.
Yeah, it's like a buffer.
Yep, that's right.
You know, so we're going to use Georgia as a buffer. Also, early on, you had a lot of early Georgia slave owners who were, you know, essentially afraid. Like, listen, man, our slaves are whooping us and running down south, and we can't do nothing about it. Because we're not going to go down there.
Beneath the myth of disappearance that is in all of these published books from the early 1800s on, beneath that is the fact of the Indian presence. And the very same books that will say the Indians disappeared will then proceed to tell you all about the Indians that they know that are part of their communities. And what is abundantly clear through the secondary sources and through the overseers' records, the Indian overseers' records, is that the Indians never disappeared. They're always here. The Nipmuc presence.
And of course, we are told that the reason they look like that by racist archaeologists is not because they were black, but because there was a big earthquake and the heads flipped around and rolled around in the mud for a very long time and looked like black people. That's the source for another presentation. You also have, in addition to the massive stone heads, the terracottas. This is a terracotta that some people say looks like Lawrence Fishburne, Samuel L. Jackson, Runoko Rashidi, Bob Lott. Depending on what time of day it is and how you're feeling, you can pick one and they'll all look the same. I say it looks like Shaquille O'Neal. You be the judge.
People like Giovanni Verasino was an Italian explorer. He came to the Carolina area, and I believe this was 1524, somewhere around that nature. And he talked about the complexion of the people was black. He said not that much different from the Ethiopians. And what happens as well on his trip, a boy that is traveling with them on this journey in 1524, he actually gets caught out in the ocean and he almost drowns. And the natives save him. When they get the boy back, he tells them that these natives that saved him were black like the others. Okay, so this is something else in his letter. You can find this in the letter 1524 to Francis, King Francis.
Even when it comes to the word Indian, the root word, I hear these brothers who are historically astute and self-taught, and they say, oh, the word Indian comes from indigenous. Wrong. Came from indigo. What is indigo? See, when you start getting to the root of a thing, the indigo is what they saw in the color of the people. So now when I look at my lighter skinned brothers and sisters, because that's what I call them, you don't look indigo to me. You don't look red to me.
Some say Jamaica is the land of the Arawaks. Who are the Arawaks? Misrepresented, mistold. Then we are told Arawak is a language, and we are told Tainos are the people. Who are these Tainos? We ask ourselves, are they some Amerindians that came down from the Americas? Is it the case? But we know we are children of the Amaru. Some say we are Olmec when we are in Mexico. The Aztecs, the Mayas, the Incas, they are all us. We used to raft, circumnavigate the Americas. We are the progenitors of the human family.
The HMS Challenger was a ship that went on an expedition in the 1870s, and they went to different places around the world, and one of the places they went to was a place down in South America called Terra del Fuego. It's right on the tip of South America. And they took photographs of some of the Native American people there. And one of the Native Americans down there, one of the Native American pictures they took is a man who looks like a West African man. He's pure Native American though. And this picture of this Native American man who looks like a West African, this photograph is at the London Museum to this day.
There was kind of an ethnic cleansing with a pen going on. And it was, if you did not have white skin, you were considered black. And a lot of times, I mean, even today, you go into the town halls and you see where people have actually written over the records, where it was put in that they were Indian, and someone went in and wrote black over it. And you can actually see in censuses from time to time where they may have been Indian in the first 3 censuses, and then the last 6 of their life, they're considered black.
Many of us were not brought on slave ships. Let's keep this thing a buck. Only 6% of black people enslaved in Africa came to North America. I'm gonna say it again. This has been documented facts. Only 6%, no, but most of us are from Africa. That's not true. Only 6% of the people enslaved in Africa were brought to North America. Most of them were brought to the Caribbean and South America, Central America, Brazil. Only 6% came to North America. This is documented. Let's talk truth. See, we're going to have to get this shit out here and just talk the truth.
Fort Pike belonged to us before the Europeans ever came here. That was one of our forts, and it wasn't for a fort for battle against European. That was built as a safety zone against with the water. So our people built mounds. Fort Pike was originally a mound and a storage place, okay? There were salt mines down there. And my people built that as what you would call a modern day refrigerator or deep freezer. Fort Pike, from my ancestors, was told to me, this was built where they went down and put meat, buffalo meat, and salted the meat, and that's where they stored it at. A lot of historians don't know that, so I'm giving them a clue to what Fort Pike was. That was a freezer, in other words, where they had their meat.
For me personally, I went back to my tribe in South Dakota, reclaiming my identity, reclaiming my power, reclaiming my tribal relationships, my communal relationships, and I got my name, Ela. Ela. H-E-L-A.
What's that?
And it means little mountain in my tribe. So I have a name that was handed down to me from my great-grandfather, and it was given to me from my tribe. So that was around 2017, and I'll say this, it shook my world up because all the history was just being given to me, and then my ancestors were standing right next to me. So everywhere I go, I'm not walking alone.
Guerrero, you say he was Indian and black. What's an Indian? What's an Indian? Let's get into that. Who are the Native Americans? Let's get into it. Because that's another thing we're going to touch on in the damn museum. Who in the hell were the real Aboriginal Americans? Y'all only think that it was the Mongoloid-looking natives that were the real Native Americans. And we have to understand the Aboriginal people here were also the Negroid people, which are us. It were black people looking just like, get off there. Black people looking just like us, who were the Aboriginal people in the Americas.
Second movement were the Clovis Folsom. C-L-O-V-I-S F-O-L-S-U-M. Clovis,
right, the Clovis
Folsom.
people. Right.
Okay, the Clovis people. Now, they're Africans too, but they're taller. They call Clovis Folsom because they were found in New Mexico by a brother, by the way. His name was Mick Junker. You know, he was an archaeologist and anthropologist, but he couldn't get no respect because he was black. But he was the one that came out with bones, called the Clovis Folsom, found in Clovis and Folsom, New Mexico.
Okay, so that's where they get the name, the Folsom people.
Exactly. They get it from what we today call Folsom.
Right.
And Clovis, New Mexico.
When I first went to Ghana, my first time ever to Ghana, with Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and we went to a hotel in Takoradi, and they had one of the biggest murals I've ever seen, about 30 feet by 30 feet, on this big wall in the lobby of the hotel. And what was the mural? Africans trading with Africans in North America. And they since then, I think Best Western has taken over the hotel. And I went there last year to see if they still had that mural I saw 20, 30 something years ago. And they said they have it, but it's downstairs, that they didn't destroy it. They took that wall down, put it downstairs. But it was this mural in Africa. A hotel built by Kwame Nkrumah, showing Africans trading with Africans in North America pre-Columbus.
Before we go, we want to hit
one thing quick before we
go
leave.
ahead.
Let's look at the census that's coming out. First, my people were under Indian. Then someone come along and say, well, we're going to take them, we're going to move them again. We're going to make them mulatto. So some of my people got trapped back there under Indian while some moved into the mulatto era. Then when the white man seen that wasn't going to eliminate enough of us, then he moved us from mulatto. Then he moved us to colored. I can show you how I got where I'm at. So then my people, some of them got left into the colored zone. Then they moved my people again into Negro, Black, and African American. All I'm asking, my blood kin, I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm looking for a Pacific people that's lost here in New Orleans that have the same blood lineage that the two of us have, that got lost through the census. Like this time, last census, we were Native American.
Today, but when the English came to this country, this whole area was known as Poconoke country, or King Philip country later on. Any map prior to the King Philip War will stay right on it, Poconoke country. So Wampanoag is a name that was given to us during the King Philip War, around the year 1675, 1676, when the colonists outlawed the word Poconoke and made it illegal for you, if you were male 14 years of age or older, to say you were Poconoke. And they started calling us Wampanoag at that time. And that was a law that was on the books until after the year 2000. And if you were 14 years of age or older and you were male, they would kill you on sight. If you said you were Pokanoket, they could kill you on sight.
Next topic, we will be talking about the American Aborigines. There were tribes that were already here. And unfortunately, most people still believe that all blacks came from the ships from Africa. So let's talk about some of those statistics. According to PBS.org, only 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped from Africa, but only 10.7 million actually survived. And of that 10.7 million, 388,000 came to North America, and the rest were distributed to South America and the Caribbean. But the first people that were here were the American Aborigines. According to Indigenous.Americans.com, the American Aborigines owned 1 million square miles worth of land in the Louisiana Territory, southeastern region of Florida, and the colony of California. In many areas of America, black nations existed way before Christopher Columbus even arrived.
You gotta be able to fight for who you are. You have to respect who you are, and you have to love your heritage. You have to know where your roots are, and you have to live like that. No matter what anyone else does.
The greatest feeling of all is to go down by the Indian church and to touch the ground and know that that ground has never, ever belonged to anyone but us. We've been here 30,000 years, and I think we'll be here in another 30,000 years.
Like any ethnic group celebrating its cultural history, a gathering of contemporary Native Americans presents an audience with a mixture of the old and the new. Prescription sunglasses grace the painted faces of tribal elders. Handmade bracelets and gold wristwatches adorn the same arm. Regalia, the buckskins, beads, and feathered headdresses worn at such special occasions, are often based on historic garments of Western nations.
And I said to him, so we can prove that Native American people were sent to the West Indies, right? That's a fact. He said, yes, that's documented. No one can dispute that there was Native American people sent to West Indies. So I said to him, where are they at? Where are the people who look like the Indian people here in America? Where are they at in the West Indies? Where's this group of people who look like the quote Seminole people today, the Creek people today, the Cherokee people today?
That's a good question. Yeah.
The Lakota, because see, I'm attacking them now because now it becomes a problem. Like, oh, you know, no, stop. If they sent millions of Indians over to the West Indies, 1680 to 1750, let's just simplify it and say they just sent 51,000. How are you going to send 51,000 people to Jamaica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Antilles, Antigua? Name all of the countries and islands that make up the West Indies.
Indigenous black people have been in the Americas for thousands of years before slavery and Christopher Columbus. In Columbus's own diary, his son Ferdinand Columbus confirmed that his father did in fact meet black tribes upon reaching the New World. Explorers like Giovanni Verrazzano, when he got to the Carolinas, he met the Cape Fear Indians, who he said resembled the Ethiopians of Africa. Explorers like Hernando de Soto, when he got to Florida in 1512, he started warring with the Florida Indians, who he described as big, black, and had woolly hair. Also, in the book called Primitive Black Nations of America, Constantine Rafinus points out that the black Indians met the Spaniards in Louisiana in 1543. We've always been here. We are the indigenous people.
We're going to talk about this wardrobe too, because you used to wear a lot of Indian stuff.
Yes.
That wasn't at first, but then later.
Yeah. Well, what I did was I wanted to pick a part of our collective history that we didn't celebrate.
Because
it's right here in our face.
Yeah, you're
Blackfoot. Yeah, Blackfoot. Well, that's from up in near the Canadian border. But yeah, Blackfoot Indians. This is what I was trying to represent.
Well, you did. You did.
Yeah.
Picolia, you said earlier that you knew my parents.
I knew them when they were killed.
Yeah, Picolia's father was chief of the Comanche Nation.
Your mother was also Comanche. Her name was Laura. When she was only a seed, she rode with her father in raids against the intruders. Your father was tall, straight like tree, strong, and blacker than the great buffalo.
We lose a lot of history, we lose a lot of culture, we lose a lot of context. And a lot of us also lost our identity and our connection to our homeland because we were taught by our colonizers that our homeland is in a different space.
Yes, but see, and they even know because they wrote it in their journals that that the coastal tribes, and again, most of these coastal tribes, they were of a Negroid stock, and they have it in their books that the coastal tribes have been completely absorbed into the Negro race.
Every foundational Black American, for the most part, your grandma tell you somebody got Indian in the family.
I was just about to say that.
Heard that.
Yeah.
And I've been that person before. Man, grandma don't know what she's talking about. I love my grandma. Grandma know what she's talking
Look, she getting old.
Right,
That's
right.
it.
That's that. Oh, you don't want to be African.
Facts.
Now, the more information that comes out
Starts to make sense.
You starting to realize,
Yeah.
hey, man, it's some validity to that. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? There's some validity to that.
Yeah.
Some more explorers are Antonio Pigfagan. And Antonio Pigfagan is very significant because he traveled around the world with Magellan. And so as traveling around the world with Magellan, he's seen black people all over. And he knew the difference between a black person because a lot of times they try to tell us, oh, well, these people are just kind of tannish or reddish, and they thought everybody was black. But Antonio Pigfagan traveled around the world. When he got to Brazil, he said these people who were making these giant canoes, these were black men. Looks like they came out the infernos of hell. That's what he said.
And our way of thinking, right? And it's not, and I had to get delivered from it too. Like literally everything that they told us is a lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got us up here thinking that all of us from Africa. I know I'm finna get ready to ruffle some feathers right now. I'm sorry, but my grandmother never told me we were from Africa. A lot of us are Indians, Black, Cherokee, Blackfoot Indians.
I'm geeky. We was already over here.
This is what I'm saying.
Right. So for Nipmuc people, this must have been particularly a difficult time to live because here you have a bunch of people in the dominant culture, the white culture, let's say, saying, you've all vanished. You're no longer Nipmuc people. And you have Nipmuc people saying, well, I consider myself a Nipmuc person. I have a family heritage. I have a set of beliefs. And I have a community that I live with that for me is distinctly Nipmuc. At the same time, you have the white culture saying, no, you're shoemakers now. And more importantly, you're a person of color. You're no longer a Nipmuc person. And that shows through in these county histories and also in the census records at the time. You find a person described in the 1860 census as an Indian. In the 1870 census, they're described as a person of color or a colored person. Same person, but the census taker, as part of the white dominant society, decides that this person is no longer Nipmuc.
Historical evidence documents their close relationship. Blacks became chiefs, signed treaties, and served on the tribal council. They intermarried. They were equals, Opala says, and the Indians depended on them as warriors and interpreters.
So there absolutely is proof of the Black Seminole importance to the tribe.
Absolutely. There's a lot of intelligence information that passes back to Washington. For instance, General Jessup, the commanding general, writes back at one point to the War Department and says, the Negroes rule the Indians. What he was referring to was the fact that no significant decision was ever taken in the Seminole councils unless the black members agreed to it.
So, you know, and then even when you get into the scripture and you get into Revelation chapter 18 and on up, it calls America spiritual Egypt. Then if you read the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, it says that the people of Yisrael, or what they call the Hebrew Israelites, it said that they will go into Egypt again by way of ships. You see what I'm saying? And then you start really studying slave history and what's really going on here. It's like, hold on, maybe we already up in this deal. Mm-hmm. So me personally, I think that they tampered and flipped the maps, man.
Now, the Africans of Guinea also had dugout canoes hewn from these monumental trees on the coast there. In 1500, just a few years after Columbus's voyage, the Portuguese captain Pacheco Pereira wrote, "In this country can be found the largest canoes made of a single trunk. Some are so large that they hold 80 men. Now, the West Africans were known to lash two dugout canoes together, side by side, and no one questions the seaworthiness of a similar type of Polynesian catamarans. Well, here's a 15th century Portuguese painting of sailing canoes on the Congo estuary. The Portuguese, like Captain Pereira, had heard that African traders were visiting Brazil in the mid-1400s. So to demonstrate that mariners from West Africa could have sailed to the Americas using papyrus vessels as early as 2000 BCE, Norwegian adventurer Tor Heyerdahl actually used ancient shipbuilding techniques in order to construct and sail the Ra 1 and the Ra 2 in 1969 and 70. And generally, some type of sailing vessel will average about 100 miles per day, even without sails. And in an ocean current, something like a raft or a reed boat can average about 60 miles.
The Indians don't really get too along with the firewater, and
Are you an Indian?
Yes.
Are you an Indian?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I thought you were a black guy. Oh, really?
Oh,
I thought you were a black guy.
Hey.
You're Indian?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me.
Hey.
You're Indian?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
You gotta be
What
kidding
kind
me.
of Indian are you?
Like Tonto Indian?
Shinnecock Indian.
Really? You're a Shinnecock?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know you were a Shinnecock.
You could have fooled me.
That's the kind I am.
Hey.
So you should be Big Chief Bastard, not Old Dirty.
His family was here when Columbus landed. His family was here when Columbus landed, huh?
Is that right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So you
Because we find again and again and again that you have a deliberate effort to wipe out the evidence, to hide it, to explain it away. Why is it that this photograph, even now, I am not permitted to use that until 1985 because it involves a whole series of things. But why is it that this head is not among the heads at Villa Hermosa, is not among the heads in the National Geographic or the Smithsonian or any traveling circus of Olmec heads? It is hidden at Tuxtla where nobody goes.
Through oral history, at least 2,000 years, my family is primarily Native American.
And when you say at least 2,000 years, that means, I assume, that you can trace it back to Africa and also to your Native American heritage.
The Africa part I'm not as certain about, although the stories, the oral history has been there since the 1700s. And not only did I hear it, but my youngest brother, 9 years younger, heard it as a little child. I mean, but the Native American thing is real clear.
Well, first of all, we know that 1619 represents the beginning of our presence in North America. The 1619 don't even represent the beginning of our presence as enslaved Africans in North America.
Right.
We don't know the date, since the African is the Aboriginal community on every continent.
Right.
So we were here in North America as long as we were in Australia or India or China or Africa. And because the whites in America have either hidden or destroyed the anthropological and archaeological finds that show our presence.
Von Wutenau has, in addition to these little sculptures, he has a catalog of everything he has. Brilliant photographs taken by several professionals over the years.
She is apparently the director of the dancing group. And this is a man, and his features are Totonac. They are not Negroid, but they paint them with chapapote, so it is a warrior who is black. That is also an atavismo because they knew that the Olmecs were black.
You say that the Olmec people themselves were black?
No, but this one certainly was black. You see, you can't see. And here is the proof for it. It's one of the best proofs I have. This is a figure made that is between the Olmecan period and the Totonacan period, transition period. And this is an Olmec sculpture, and to be black, they covered it with tar. You see, it's a stone head, but it's covered with this tar. So not only the features and the thick lips come out, primitive, but it is made black.
The United States has established a process so that they can control the Native American population.
Yes, and one of the big things is this blood quantum. So now I'm going back to the article now.
Okay.
So I'm going to read what they said next. It says blood quantum is not how tribal nations have historically determined who is a tribal member. Rather, blood quantum was created and later used by the United States government to depossess Native American people of their lands and civil liberties. Now again, these are the words from Ancestry.com.
Elwyn Warhorse Gillum is the chief of the Choctaw Indian tribe. When Katrina arrived, Gillum and part of her tribe fled to Arkansas. The chief is fighting now to bring her tribe back to Louisiana.
My people been here forever. This is home. This is my motherland. My burial grounds are here, not too far up the road. I tend the burial grounds, me and my family. Most of my history is passed down to me under that tree right there. The things I lost, money came back. I lost the trees. I lost my animals. The old cypress still made it. I love that cypress tree. My grandfather always would tell me about that cypress, never cut that cypress. And the storm didn't even take it down. We're going to have to heal ourselves just like this tree doing.
Said that everybody came to America before Columbus, but of all the people who came, the African exercised the most decisive influence. He said, when the African first came to the Americas, he did not come as slave, he came as master of his own destiny. And I think that pretty much sets the guidelines.
The Indians would do a chant, and they recorded this chant in, I want to say, the 1930s, 40s, or 50s, around that time. They recorded this Hopi chant. And at the time, it sounded like gibberish. They didn't know what it was. The United States government recorded this chant, and it just kind of sounded like gibberish. And it was an ancient chant from the Hopi Indians. Later on, they found out that this chant was just not gibberish. It was actually them speaking in a broken form of Arabic. So this shows that, again, many Aboriginal people here had connections with Islamic Moors from medieval times.
When they traveled over here and they came upon land and they was greeted by the natives, and the natives had to go and get a translator. So that proves several things, right? Because you can't learn Arabic in one contact. So there had to be frequent contacts between them, between the Moorish merchants and the black natives that was over here.
Columbus went to Cuba. Columbus said on top of a mountain, he saw a mosque. So that's more evidence to show that there was not only an Islamic connection, but there was a connection with the Moors coming over here, corresponding with the people.
Explorers came and met the indigenous people. They passed Africans going back to West Africa when they were coming here. When they got here, they spoke to the indigenous here in the Caribbean, and they had a spearhead. And it was very unique because it blended different types of chemicals, and that type of spearhead could only be found in Ghana, and so it's called guanine, and that can only be found in certain places. There was trade going on constantly.
Small percentage of all the Africans that were enslaved were actually shipped to North America.
That's probably close to the truth. They ain't come from Africa, bro. That don't make no sense. Nobody run a business like that.
Well, they're saying that a lot of people did, though. That's 10.7 million people.
Came on boats?
That's what they're saying. That's
well, they were in the slave trade. I don't know if that means that they necessarily came here. They could have been going to Europe.
Well, no, they were saying that. They were saying that it was in the
Caribbean. Slave trade does not have to come from Africa. I can trade with you right here in America.
But was it why they...
No, it said directly to North America is only the under 400,000.
Right.
Involved in the shipping and going all over the world. It could be going anywhere.
But from Africa,
that's
correct?
Less than 10%.
Africans shipped, yes.
Right, that's less than 10%.
Less than 10% in North America, but 10.7 million Africans enslaved and moved. Yeah, 10.7 survived, right?
were shipped, but it didn't say where they were shipped. It's just
Right.
to the New World. The New World is very arbitrary.
And
Yeah, it could be
only
anything.
388,000 actually made it to North America.
Yeah, this land.
I could trade from Haiti or Jamaica or South America.
Right. So you think yeah, right. So you think that there was probably already a significant population of Africans that were sea-bearing that made it all the way over here.
Probably because she was as black as your shirt, but her hair was as straight as silk.
Yes.
All right. So she might have been an admixture between our Asiatic brothers and sisters and our early indigenous African population.
Right.
And there was a lot of people like that where I grew up.
Yes.
There's an island there in the middle of the Walkmore Pee River. It's one of the big freshwater islands called Sandy Island. And everybody on there were the people who was indigenous to this land and the Asiatic native who they married into. My first child comes from that island. She was supposed to be my wife. That didn't work out. But we have a beautiful daughter, who's my eldest daughter. And if you saw her father, Mr. Nelson, you know, I couldn't figure out why he looked like a Chinese dude back coming from this black community.
Right.
But his wife, who was as dark as your shirt, but as straight Asiatic type hair, Miss Ophelia, you know, because we didn't make distinction then, we were just one black people.
Right.
As you go older, you try to work out why were these differences, and then we began to learn and read LaRon Bennett and doing studying, and began to say, oh, there's something they didn't tell us about ourselves.
There are many Native American indigenous tribes that exist today that are not federally recognized, you know, and that is because they did not want to follow the rules, maybe in particular this blood quantum rule,
Right.
that said that requires tribes to use this. Now, that may not be the only thing, the only factor that was keeping them from that, but again, it's the United States usurping their authority over the tribes, and so the tribes that are recognized are the ones who have accepted that.
They've assimilated.
Yeah.
They've assimilated.
What? People attack people for no reason in the name of civilization.
That's true too, but I'm talking about that's from a big perspective. That means I'm coming to conquer I'm coming to conquer your country.
And that part,
I'm talking about I'm coming to be your friend. I'm coming to civilize you to brotherhood.
But you know what?
Familyhood.
Look what happened with you think about indigenous people. The story they've been befriended and then
we're the indigenous people.
You know why? Because the problem with it is that I understand what you're saying, but there's always somebody who takes kindness for weakness.
Dog. I don't know, a lot of these black guys today, these gangster type guys, they all got names like that they make up for themselves.
Huh. He means like the rappers. You know, the rappers, they all got names like that. Snoop Doggy Dogg, Ice Cube, Q-Tip, Method Man. My favorite was always Flavor Flav from Public Enemy.
I don't know anything about that. But it makes me think about Indians. You know, they got names like Red Cloud, Crazy Horse, Running Bear, Black Elk.
That kind of shit. Yeah, Indians, niggas, same thing.
They were reclassified and erased from history. So how does this act of paper genocide affect American Indian identity? Simple. When the registrar counts and sees him/her as a Negro, many Indians have endured paper genocide and have fought tooth and nail to get their Aboriginal birthrights restored. However, not all of their attempts were successful. Paper genocide shows us that you will always be seen as some nigga regardless of your indigenous documentation.
You the motherfucking Indian if you got carbon in your skin. They lied when they told you in history all the Indians gone. Where they go? Where they go? Where they go? They said there was 8 billion Indians. Where they go? You really believe they killed 8 billion of us? They just got here. They just got here. They just got here. Fuck what they telling you. You see, these motherfuckers went back and wrote themselves in our history trying to They got spells of us trying to make us think that they been here and shit, because we have forgot, nigga. 500 of their man-made years, nigga. 1492 is when they landed. They didn't take over to 1776. They got you thinking they been here for forever. They just got here, nigga. You are the Indians. They called you that right in history. Indians, nigga.
But this is a very special day simply because I get to really be intimate with a lot of individuals that I haven't necessarily met face to face all of yet. But the fact that the support has been there, even without necessarily knowing each other, shows how special and what it means to be a native of this country and be a Native American. And for me, I had no idea. I had no idea about the history. I had no idea how inclusive this group is and what it means to be part of Standing Rock and be part of the United Sioux Nation. So I want to thank all you guys for hosting myself, my sister, my best friend Brett Carroll, my grandparents, and the fact that I get to meet my family finally. I mean, you guys have no idea. This is finally meeting my mom's family, and now I'm with you guys forever, and I hope that you don't mind that, because I don't mind it either. So.
This is Chichen Itza. Thousands of years ago, you got blacks there arresting the people that you call Native Americans. They put a special paint on them, a tattoo type of paint, so that they can recognize them for life and you couldn't watch it off. When you look at the old movies and you see the people in jail with the stripes, they get it from nuts. So I had to pay $650 to get this book extracted from the Smithsonian because they don't want you to show black people arresting pale people on our land. This is Mexico. This is Mexico, man. This is Mexico, Chichen Itza. This is black people already here before slavery. This is your home, man. Why you tripping?
Here, look at this. I was sent a photograph about this by a friend in Mexico. Do you know the Mexican government refused to remove this? An earthquake threw this up, but it looked so Negro, they allowed it to sink back in the earth. I was tempted for a while to hire a helicopter and pick the damn thing up. But do you know what this weighs? About 15 tons. You can't pick that up with an ordinary helicopter. Next.
And the whites moved into Alabama from Georgia. Their translator was a black man. There's a monument to him on Talladega, near Talladega University. The translator's a black guy. They white people couldn't do it. Look, Lewis and Clark. Didn't they take the black dude, York, and he seemed to be able to get to the Indians and they couldn't? We're white, we own you. But they listened to the black person.
There is another episode that says that, as Dr. Imhotep will tell you, that the presence of Africans on this continent of America, that we call America, goes back 100 to 120,000 years ago.
Right.
So that all of those episodes create a whole picture for us to understand as an African people, our place on this continent. With due respect to the peoples who are today called Native Americans, you are not the original Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You are another wave of human beings coming to this part of the world a couple thousand years ago, but you met an African people when you came to this part of the world.
Right.
The indigenous people to America, according to the scholars of America's Indian antiquity, Leo Weiner and Barry Fell and Sertima, more recent, was the black people themselves. So when we think of the Native American we see today, and many of them we see, and we'll get to that $5 Indian that you like so much, but even the Native American that we think look like the Native American, the original Native American didn't even look like them. The original Native American were black people.
Whole belt from what is now called Jacksonville, Florida, really down further to Gainesville, all the way up to Wilmington, North Carolina. That was the density of the African population that the European met here. And in one of Laurent's book, he tells how, I think it's in The Shaping of Black America, a chapter called The Red and the Black. And in that chapter, he talks about how the white folks made a decision and said, listen, the indigenous people look just like the ones we bring from Africa, so let's raid their village and enslave all of them.
Right.
That war began.
Rudy Macklin is the director of the Office of Minority Health in Louisiana. He's trying to help Warhorse and the Choctaw return to their homeland.
She was having a problem with her tribal members. And so she calls me up and she said, hi, Rudy Mack? I said, yes. She said, this is Chief Warhorse. I said, okay. She said, I'm with the Choctaw tribe. I said, Choctaw tribe? I said, I have a listing of all of the Native American tribes and I don't see Choctaw. She said, there's a reason for that. I said, oh, really? She said, well, we're kind of the last of the Black Indians. I said, Black Indians? I said, wait a minute. I remember in the past hearing of some Black Indians in history lessons saying like that. She said, oh, yeah. She said, we're the Choctaw tribe.
And proven that there were black people here in the Americas in large numbers, not just one or two. There were large numbers of black-skinned people with afros here in the Americas, and this was very well documented by many of the European explorers who got here. They described exactly what they saw. And some of the early maps in the 1500s, they would draw black-skinned people with afros. So this is very well documented. And plus, if we can circumnavigate the world, there's black people in Samoa, in Easter Island. I've seen them. I done been to these places and seen black-skinned people with afros in these remote islands. You think they couldn't come here?
Prehistoric skulls were found buried in layers of soil 9 to 12,000 years old. They are the oldest skulls in the Americas. And this is the oldest of them all. The skull of a young woman nicknamed Luthia by scientists. Can she tell us who the first Americans were? Walter Neves is a physical anthropologist at Sao Paulo University in Brazil. He's been using a standard and reliable archaeological measure, the shape of the skull, to find out what race she belonged to.
91.
He fully expected Luthia to be a Mongoloid, an ancestor of the American Indians.
91.
But then he fed the measurements into the computer.
When we start running the computer and seeing the results, it was amazing because we realized that the statistics, the quantitative analysis we were doing was not showing just people to be Mongoloid. In fact, the analysis was showing just people as anything except Mongoloid.
We are certain of, what we are absolutely certain of, is that the Olmec civilization, which is the mother of all American civilizations, is not a single-stranded civilization. It does not belong to one race. It does not belong to what we conceive of as the Native American who came across the Bering Straits. There obviously were other influences, and among those influences was the African, specifically the Egypto-Nubian of the Mediterranean.
When I wore that headdress in Cleveland, I got so much flack because the Indians, they felt like they were being picked on or some shit. You know what I'm saying? But little did they know, Flavor Flav is a Native American too. I have Indian blood in me, and my family comes from the Shinnecock Reservation, eastern Long Island. And so does LL Cool J's family. They come from the Shinnecock Reservation, eastern Long Island.
Now the thing, exactly. Whoa, where'd all the continents go? So this is, look at how close this is. I mean, white people don't think that you could go this is closer compared to more than twice the distance that Columbus sailed. This will win a drink for you in a bar game sometime. Which state is closest to Africa? Maine. Yeah, look. See there, you got to need a globe for this. Look at that. You know, versus yeah, geometry, science. There you go. Yes. So anyway, so And so very few Americans know this. And why is this? So having examined textbooks throughout for years, up until 2018, James W. Lowen says that although some books cite the alternative possibility that Vikings, Norse, or even Irish may have reached America first, not one textbook, old or new, mentions the West Africans. So whether or not you give any credence to this admittedly controversial Afrocentric theory, it's obvious that Columbus was not the first to discover America, but the last.
The tens of millions of Indians who vanished following 1492 did not all perish in America's Holocaust. Slave catchers would traffic millions of Indians as slaves to Europe and Africa. The slave trade didn't start with Africa. The transatlantic slave trade started in America with American Indians.
Black people, the original indigenous people of America?
Yes, we are. We are the indigenous peoples of America. However, we as a people have to consider what we're stating when we say that. You know, a lot of times, specifically with us in the United States, when we hear America, we identify America with the United States and not the United States as a part of the Americas. Because everybody knows we have North America and South America, and we have a whole bunch of countries that reside on this continent, both North and South, called America.
So you've got 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, and it adds up fast. It adds up so fast, in fact, that if you go back 20 generations, you've got over 1 million grandparents.
1,048,576 to be exact. And in each generation, DNA testing can provide information about only 2 of them.
So you could be Peruvian on your mother's 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 side, Japanese on your father's 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 side, Swedish on everything else.
And you'll never know.
And you'll never know the Swedish from the Y chromosome or the mitochondrial DNA.
And there's direct routes from Africa to the Americas. Forget about the Bering Strait and all that walking. You can take boats over here, and there's rivers within the ocean that'll take you directly here. So there's 100% proof, and it's factual that there were black people here.
For the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Chief Warhorse and her tribe do not officially exist. They're not entitled to federal support.
We are punished today because we helped free slaves, okay? If my tribe never helped to free slaves, they may never would have bothered us. If we would have just continued helping Europeans as they came in, we were fine. But when we decided to help the slaves, now we did something wrong. So that's why I don't have my recognition today.
You and some other black scholars believe that these people, African people, came to this continent before Columbus.
We don't believe, we know.
How do you know? What evidence?
The evidence is there. For example, when you go to Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula, and at Ecuador and places like that, they have caches of Carthaginian money found 200 feet down in the ground, meaning that there were pluvial disruptions, and those money was buried. So it indicates a period of time, at least from that, when you look at the stratas, you could tell the period of time in which they've been here.
A publication that comes out from the Smithsonian Institute. And the statement reads as, the Indians associated and intermarried with the Negroes until they finally lost their identity and were classed with that race, so that a considerable portion of the blood of the Southern Negroes is unquestionably Indian.
Wow, you know, that's a very profound statement. Now,
Many Native Americans were reclassified as Negro, and they still do that to this very day. You have black Aboriginal tribes. You have the Shantikok out there in Long Island. You have the Washita down in Louisiana that many people don't talk about. These are black Native tribes that's still here, and they are not getting the federal recognition that they deserve.
In the early 1700s. And so the indigenous population and the newly arriving population, along with some of our Asiatic cousins, we amalgamated to create what we now call the African American.
Exactly.
And that's what you were for every Thanksgiving they had.
Everyone.
They burned you. Every time they burnt black people, black Indians. See, Thanksgiving didn't begin with the African. It began
The world is a place for black people. But meaning that black people didn't choose to be in America. They were forced.
Well, we didn't choose to be under this system. First of all, there's a lot of evidence that is coming up recently that's showing that we was already here. That we are the fucking Indians.
Only living.
We're going extinct.
Exactly. How many?
A long time ago, this was all black. All a sea of blacks. A long time ago. But now, we've lost. We're going extinct. All these businesses, there's no blacks working. It's all Mayans. My culture is totally gone kaput. We're trying to save little bit. I'm a leader here.
Oh yeah.
I'm Philip Flores. If you look in the internet and the books, I'm in the Lonely Planet, the Rough Guide.
Oh really?
Yeah man, we're fighting to save much of what is left of Garifuna. They use Garifuna to pull tourists. But when you read all the books, everything, when you go Livingston, you will see a different culture, a whole different anomaly. That is used, we're just being used as a puller.
But not.
But when you get here, you say to yourself, where are they? Because we don't exist. It's like we're non-existent.
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. You go to East St. Louis, you got a place in East St. Louis called the Cahokia Mounds. And it's an old civilization, Indian tribe called themselves the Cahokians. You know what I'm saying? And you look at these mounds were pyramids. Then you start digging in these mounds, you find hieroglyphs. They done found emerald tablets with Hebrew writings on it, the Hebrew commandments on it, and they carbon dated these things back, and it's older than things that's actually in what they call Egypt today. It's a conflict right there. I got to start questioning things.
The point is stated that the first black Native Americans emerged from these groups, but we know that that's not necessarily the case because the indigenous populations all throughout the southeastern United States and even on the islands and parts of South America were of a Negroid stock. And explorers were already stating these facts before, as they were coming here. And so any African that were brought over here didn't necessarily make the people black. They were already so-called black.
Yes, they were of a Negroid stock already. They were already of a dark complexion. As a matter of fact, I have a statement here that says in 1524, the Carolina coast people were said to be of a dark color, not much unlike the Ethiopians.
There was a Cherokee nation here on the East Coast. From the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean to the northern border of Florida and the southern border of New York, all of that was Cherokee land. And in the travels of the African people here as free people before slavery, our blood mixed. And a lot of these people that were African people became part of tribes, became part of the original Cherokee Nation. And when the Trail of Tears got underway, some of these same people that were of mixed blood heritage, who had been married to Cherokees and Cherokees married them, were also put on that trail. But because of that mixture of blood, they were a little more resilient than the Cherokees, the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, and all of those other people from those 6 tribes.
Don't understand, well, they do understand, and they hide the presence of the black Indians, who were the first ones, but they are still here. If you go down to Louisiana and ask for Chief Warhorse, she will blow you away about her Shatta. She tells me, I went down there talking about Choctaw, and she says, no, that's not how our name is pronounced, it's Shatta. I said, excuse me. Sorry. So I have to remind myself all the time to do that. But all of those Indians, and I said, well, how many black Indians unmixed are down here? How many black men? I said about 24,000. And I said, black Indians? Unmixed, she said, no, unmixed is about 12,000 of us down here in Louisiana. But there are also Black Indians, unmixed, in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, in southern parts, and then down also in the Everglades. I said, oh, you mean in Everglades? She says, yeah, those are the, oh goodness, I can't remember everything. Anyway, she said she named some Indians that are down in Florida, and I gave it wrong, and she said, no, those are our people. So those are the unmixed Black Indians that are still alive today that no one is hearing about.
Wow.
From that lady.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that, Dr.
The migration of peoples of color into the Americas is nothing new. The Europeans came here and documented everything they saw. But of course, the Vatican said, you're not going to tell the true history of North America. And all of that is hidden away in the archives of the Vatican.
Wow, and in the pictures, I'm telling you, it looks so small, but this thing is huge, man. This is what I came for. This is what I've been looking for, basically, guys. So I'm gonna give you a look and tell me what it looks like. Honest opinion, guys. Tell me, we're in Mexico, and I found this piece here. Tell me what it looks like, or where it's from, okay? I won't say anything, but tell me what it looks like. So, ¿por qué la gente dice negro? Why do we call it negro? This is the name of the piece, is called negro.
Pues prácticamente por sus rasgos negroides, ¿no? Que tiene su labio grueso, pómulos así prominentes, ¿no? La forma también así del cabello.
Right.
Así es.
Wow.
Just also make a point that Native Americans were being used as slaves as well.
Oh,
and
yes,
so
most
just
definitely.
because you were a slave, that didn't mean that you came from Africa. And as a matter of fact, later on, we'll see more than likely they were of a Native American stock rather than African as far as being on the mainland United States.
Yes, that's true.
Came over here. You have a lot of them, whether it was Giovanni Verasino, who was an Italian explorer who in 1524 wrote to King Francis about the black folks he saw over here, and wrote about several black tribes he saw over here. You have people like Theodore Johnson, who was from the Northeast. I believe he was from New Jersey. When he went out to California, after California became part of the United States, he talked about all the black Native Americans that he saw, called them little tribes of Africans. You know, all over. They were historically described as the Digger Indians because they would dig holes in the ground, live them jet black people, and they still have photos of these people. So, I mean, the evidence is all over from the white explorers. This is why I wrote the book 19 White Men Who Admitted There Were Indigenous Black People in the Americas, because oftentimes with our people, you have to put medicine in the candy.
Come on.
You have to put medicine in the candy. I understand when people hear me, they're going to say, oh, he's making up stuff. That's not true. So I just like to present the white folks, you know, because I know deep down psychologically, that's what our people want. When some of our people ask for sources, that's what they want.
Yeah,
they want the white man. I have
deep
no
when they ask for sources.
I have no problem with that. I put the medicine in the candy and I let them speak for themselves. You know what I'm saying?
When the Europeans arrived to the Americas, they had some very interesting depictions of the people they saw here. And they often compared them to the people they saw in Africa, and they compared them to the Moors who occupied Spain.
They also spoke specifically of, you know, the characteristics of the people that they encountered. They described them, you know, very thoroughly. They said that they were melanated. They said they had Moorish attire, you know, sashes and things of that nature, plume feathers. Everything that they were used to seeing in the Iberian Peninsula, they saw mimics of it over here.
When I started going to New Orleans, like, you know, on tour and shit.
We tried.
The way they are with each other, they love each other a different way than everybody else.
It's Indian.
That's all I can say.
It's Indian territory. It's tribes. Like, people be thinking Indians with the Pocahontas looking. That ain't how Indians look. They look like them people in New Orleans. Louisiana, all over Louisiana. Them Indians, tribes.
Indigenous.
And when you take people that, you can say that, but when you take people in, man, we family.
To the Americas, the Nino brothers more specifically. Pedro Alonso Nino was well-renowned traveler and explorer.
But what's interesting is, why would Columbus bring translators? Because it meant that if he brought African translators, they must have been speaking to African people here. Because why do you need someone to interpret if you don't speak the language and they don't speak the language. So there had to have been a commonality between the two people.
But of course, you know, you get rid of all of that with Columbus, who didn't know where the hell he's going, but he had black people with him. Pizarro had black people with him. Balboa had black people with them. Magellan had black people with them. The technology for sailing, the astrolabe, all this stuff came from either the Moors or the Swahili.
If you were to walk into any mosque in America and you just laid your hands on the first person or the third person or the fifth person that you see, you realize that you're laying your hands on a Native American?
I believe North America is a very beautiful place, but if you study the history of North America, you'll find that we go through so many climatic changes that people come and go, people are destroyed, and people have to maybe immigrate up north or have to immigrate down south because of the changing weather patterns here. Look at how the weather is now. And so then, because of that, it hasn't been that much stability in North America. And so what you find is that many of the Black Native Americans, they mention the fact that they originally came, at least in terms of their migration stories, they originally came from the Southwest. And so that's interesting. But then you have people like the Nanochoke and other people up in Massachusetts. They say that their ancestors came through shipwrecks. And some of them even talk about this whole idea of ships, because we find that when Abu Bakari, when he left Malay in 1310, it was around 25,000 people who came with him. He came with 2,000 canoes, and the average canoe in Africa carries between 25 and 80 people.
There were only 8% of the slaves that came to America. So how is it that there are so many more people that they claim are black or African Americans? I think they got the numbers wrong, because a lot of Native Americans are the ones that they're counting as black folks too.
Miss Addicks, who was of Nauset Wampanoag lineage, was one of the original people killed in the Boston Massacre, the well-known Black Wampanoag.
The Mashpee Wampanoag in the late 17th and 18th centuries were known for being a kind of a haven for people of color of all different backgrounds. They were welcoming of outsiders because their definition of Indianness didn't have to do with color. It had to do with whether you were really a member of the community or not. So children who had mixed ancestry parents were fully welcomed into these communities. And this was something that was hard for whites to understand, that somebody from a very complex, racially mixed background could be fully Indian. That was a really hard concept for scholars to get their minds around.
Understand that we've been here for millenniums. We've always been here. What they've simply done is miseducated us and relabeled us time after time. And the only way they could do that was systematically, generation by generation by generation. Okay? That's why we're here today, right now, to enforce, to tell you to remember who you are. We're telling you that you are the indigenous Niji of this land. You are the true American Indians.
Yes, it was a paper genocide, but they can't wipe this out. You know what they did? They separated the elders from the young.
That's right.
And that's how the oral history got cut as well.
And the same thing is true in the British colonies along the Atlantic seaboard. In Virginia in 1705, for instance, the government decrees that the child of an Indian will be known as a mulatto. That is, a person who's half white and Indian, half African and Indian will be a...
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through the intertwined histories of Black Indigenous Americans. We hope you found inspiration and insight in the stories we've shared today. Stories that remind us of the resilience, creativity, and rich cultural heritage woven into the fabric of our collective identity. At Forgotten Black History, we believe in the importance of recovering these narratives and giving voice to those who have shaped our past, present, and continue to influence our future. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our channel, clicking the notification bell, and sharing this video to help us spread awareness about the incredible contributions of Black Indigenous communities. Join the conversation. Leave us a comment below about what surprised you or what you'd like to learn more about in future episodes. And don't forget to follow us on social media for more fascinating facts and updates. Together, let's continue to celebrate and remember the stories that deserve to be told, ensuring the legacy of forgotten Black history lives on for generations to come. See you next time on Forgotten Black History, where every story matters.
About the complete independence of people of African descent here in the Western Hemisphere, and first here in the United States, and bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary. That's our motto. We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We don't feel that in 1964, living in a country that is supposedly based upon freedom and supposedly the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for some segregationist congressmen and senators and a president from Texas in Washington, D.C. to make up their mind that our people are due now some degree of civil rights. No, we want it now, or we don't think anybody should have it.